I will start by showing you a set of interaction examples I created in the last few months. So let's start first with curved nav. This is one of the most popular demos I've created in my life. So if I click here, you can see how it navigates between these cards and it moves infinitely. And it not only that, but also you can just drag them and it's very smooth and fast. Second one is the card swipe. This is the latest one I created. You can see when I click and move, the card below it starts to appear with this kind of animation. Now when I swipe it, it just goes out and appears the next one. It's like this, and this, and this. The third one is the stack drop down. And this was inspired by Traf work from Framer University. Now, if I click on this drop down, you can see using some kind of springy animation, it expands, and I click it, it collapses with the same animation. Now the next one is the stepper demo, which is inspired by the amazing work of Oleg. You can see how you can click and swipe to the left or right, and it will just navigate to the next or the previous number. So I created this here. So if I just do this, nothing happens, but if I do this, it will just start moving and it will speed up. You can just do it one step at a time if you want. The next one is simple, but it shows how smooth this interaction can be. Just a simple drag to reorder component. You can see with all the smooth animation, you can just drag stuff. The last one is based on the awesome work of Rano. So I saw this demo on Twitter some time ago, and I thought about implementing the same thing but on the web, because the original demo was made on the iPad. So let me show you how it works. So this is the welcome screen. You can think of it as the lock screen. I can go to the home screen by just clicking and dragging to the top. And you can see how there is a smooth animation happening here. And we have a list of notes and photos. If I click on the notes, it moves with some animation to this kind of screen. And I can click on the nav bar to switch between the cards, invoice, or this or that. And you can also use the drag gesture, like this. And when I close it using the swipe up gesture, it just goes back here. And you can see I'm showing here the last one that was open. So for example, if I change it to this one and I close it, it will be this one. And I can go back to the lock screen by doing this. If you are wondering how I created all of these demos, they are fast and smooth, I would like to introduce you to the new tool I created, Veloxi. Veloxi is a new tool I created that allows us to create all of these kind of animation. It's very easy to use and it's very fast. Instead of showing you what Veloxi is and how it works, I would like to show you that through an example that we will build from scratch. So let's jump to the code editor to show you how Veloxi works. In this example, we're going to create a drag with a spring interaction. When we click on the circle, we can drag it, and once we release it, it will return to its original position with some springy animation. On this page, we have just a single div element with a class circle. In the CSS, we are just filling the whole page with a black color and creating the circle here with a white color. Now let's go to main.js to see how to implement this interaction. First, we need to install Veloxi. So run pnpm install Veloxi. After that, we need to create a new Veloxi app instance. We can do that by saying import create app, and then say create app, assign it to app variable, and then let's run it using app.run. On each page of your application, you have to create a single instance of Veloxi app. Now, doing so does nothing for now. Veloxi is built on the idea of a plugin system, which means that you need to implement your interactions inside a plugin. Now, a single app instance can have multiple plugins. You can divide all your interactions on multiple plugins, but for this example, we just need to implement a single plugin as this is a simple one. Now, there are two API styles to implement a plugin. There's the classical one, which is using the class syntax, and there's the functional one. In this example, I'm going to go with the functional. So to create a new plugin, let's call it Spring Plugin. It's a function that takes a context object, and for now, let's keep it empty. In order for Veloxi to access this plugin, we have to give it a name. And to give it a name, all you have to say Spring Plugin.plugin name, and let's give it the same name, which is Spring Plugin. After that, we need to tell Veloxi about it. And we can do so by saying app.add plugin, and let's give it the Spring plugin. Now, believe it or not, you have created your first Veloxi plugin. Now we need to put all of our code inside this function. Now this context object contains a set of utility functions to implement your interaction. You can, for example, manipulate the view properties like its position or size. You can define some hook functions like the setup or the update, and you can do more than that. But for now, we will implement the setup function. So let's say context.setup, and let's add a function here. You can think of the setup hook function as your entry point of your plugin. You can do all of the plugin preparation work, like for example, initializing some state of the views like its position or size. You can also initialize some variables you want to use in your plugin, and so. Now for now, we will just log the message setup. Now if I open up the dev tools, you should see setup. Now every time I reload, you will see the word setup because this function is only called once per page load. Next thing we want to do is to access this element in the plugin. Now Veloxi can't work with the DOM elements directly. You have first to convert them to views so you can access them in your Veloxi plugin. And doing that is very easy. All you have to do is go to that HTML element and add two data properties. The first one is data vel view, which you give it the view name here. So let's give it circle. And the second one is data vel plugin, which is the place where you assign this view to a specific plugin. Now, there's one important rule in Veloxi here. A view can only be assigned to a single plugin, which means you can't manipulate the same view from multiple plugins. This is very important because it prevents a lot of issues that can happen in the future. For example, when we have multiple plugins working on the same view, we would have some kind of conflict issues. Okay, so let's say here Spring plugin, which is the same name that we added here. Now to access a view from the plugin, you can use context.getView function. And since we named it circle, we would need to write circle. Now let's assign it to a variable called circle. And now let's log it here. So now you can see that we are accessing the view in the plugin code. Okay, now what we need to do with this? Now let's try just a quick test here and see if we can move the circle from this place to another place, for example here. Now you can do that by simply updating its position property. So on every view instance, you can access a set of properties. For example, we can access the circle.position property, and we have size, we have scale, we have rotation. Now on that position property, I would update its position using set function, and I would move it to the 200 pixels in the x-axis. To make sure that we see that after the page load, let's just wait for 2 seconds before updating it. So I'm gonna say set timeout, and wait for 2 seconds, and then display it here. Okay, so after I save, you can see after 2 seconds, it will jump from its original position to the position 200 pixels in the x-axis. So you saw how it jumps without any animation. To add animation to it, we have just to tell the view property which animator to use. So for example, we can say circle.position because that's the property we are trying to animate, and access its animator property and set it to tween, for example. So we have a few options to choose here, for example, tween, spring, dynamic, but for now, let's try tween. Now, if we save, after 2 seconds, it should move with an animation. Let's, for example, try to update it to spring. After 2 seconds, it will move with a spring animation. Okay, so now we saw how to manipulate the view position with animation. Our next step is to make the circle draggable using one of the built-in plugins that Veloxi supports, which called the drag event plugin. Okay, so let's delete all of this now. And to use that plugin, first we have to import it. So if we go here and say drag event plugin. To use an event plugin in your plugin, all you have to say is context.use event plugin. And let's pass the drag event plugin. This will return an instance for the plugin, and let's call it a drag plugin. Now to use any plugin in your plugin, you have to first assign the view to it. So to do that, we can say drag plugin, add view, circle. So the drag plugin now has an access to the circle view. What we need to do now is listen for the drag event. And to do that, we can say drag plugin on the drag event. But first we need to import this here. Okay, after this, we need to implement the second argument, which is the handler function for that event. So let's say a new function, and I'm gonna log the message dragging. Now, if I try to drag this circle, you can see we are logging the message dragging. Now, of course, we are not moving the circle yet, but I'm just showing you how this handler will be called when the drag event fires. Now, to update the circle position, we can do this. We can say circle.position.set. What we need to set it here to is the X and Y position that the drag event gives us every time the handler is called. So first, we need to access the event. We can say event. And here, we will set the X to event.x and the Y to event.y. Now, if we save, let's try to click and drag, and you can see how it works. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to make this circle return back to its original position after we release the mouse. And we can do that simply by checking if the event is dragging or not. So that's one of the other options that the event gives us. So if we are dragging the circle, then just keep updating its position. Otherwise, which means you have released the mouse button, then just make it move back to its original position. And we can do that simply by calling the reset function. Okay, let's try this. We drag, we release, and it goes back to its original position. But you can see we are doing all of that without an animation, and it's easy to fix. Like before, you have to set an animator on the position property. So circle.position.animator set, and let's now use a spring. Okay, if I try now to drag, you can see we are using the spring animator, and it returns back with the same animation. One last thing I want to add here is that I want to disable the spring animator when we are dragging the circle. So I want only to see this animation run when it gets back to its original position. And it's easy to fix. Now, in the set function, we have another argument where we can enable or disable the animator. So by default, the value is true. So if we set it to false, then it should disable the animator here. Let's try that. You can see without any animation, we are just dragging it. If I release it, it goes back using the spring animator. Okay, that's cool. So we've created our first interaction using Veloxi. So believe it or not, that's the basic workflow of every Veloxi app. You just need to know how to access views, how to use some plugins on plugin, and how to use the animators there. There are a few things I haven't covered here, but that's actually the basic idea of Veloxi. Now, the cool thing here is not it only makes it easy for you to create these kind of interactions, but it also takes care of the performance optimization behind the scenes. So you don't have to worry about anything. All your interactions will be fast and smooth. Just to give you an example, if I open up the frame rendering stats, you can see now we are displaying how many frames per second we are running here. If I try to do anything here, even if I click a lot here, it's still logged at 60 FPS. And no matter how complex your interaction is, it will always be 60 FPS. Now that you understand the basic workflow of Veloxi, you can be as creative as you want. All you have to do is just to create the logic for how the interaction should be. If you are interested in learning more about Veloxi, let me know in the comments. I can create more videos about going deeper into how Veloxi works, and I can create more videos on how to create complex interactions using Veloxi from scratch. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments section. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.